This is Empowering Homeschool Conversations.
We want families to come here and gain insightful strategies that empower them to successfully teach diverse learners at home.
Hosted by founder and CEO of SPED Homeschool, Peggy Ployer.
Our goal is that these powerful weekly conversations will boost your confidence to cultivate the best at-home learning environment for your student.
For more homeschool resources, go to spedhomeschool.com. You're listening to Empowering Homeschool Conversations with Peggy Ployer.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Empowering Homeschool Conversations. Today, we are going to talk about tapping into communication pathways of nonverbal children with special guest Kate Wilde. Welcome, Kate, to the show.
Hi, thank you so much.
Absolutely. I am super excited to interview you today. And this is the last broadcast. We've been talking about nonverbal learning all month this month. And so this is the fourth broadcast. If you haven't joined the other ones, you'll have to go back and either watch them or wait till the podcasts come out, which will be starting next week. Super excited about all these resources we have for parents home educating students with nonverbal learning challenges or just not being able to always communicate. And so that's why we're talking about communication, because communication is the key, isn't it, Kate?
Oh, yes, definitely. And hello to everybody. And communication doesn't, the word communication doesn't actually have verbal in it. So,
Right.
they're two separate words. So communication, and, there's quite a lot of research saying that 90% of the spoken word, right, is understood by a feeling tone, not by the words themselves, right?
Yeah.
So it's our facial expressions, our tone of voice, body language, whether we're tense, whether we're not tense. There's so much. And in fact, you can understand a lot, even if the words aren't clear, because we got most of the meaning from something else anyway. We just forget that all the time because we can be obsessed with words.
Yes.
But so much more in a communication.
Absolutely. That is a good way to kick this off, because I think we get so focused, and I know especially as a homeschool parent, we get so focused because curriculum often pushes us to that verbal and that written language, where a lot of the kids that we're talking about today really struggle. And yet there are other pathways. And so Kate's going to be elaborating on that with us. If you have any questions or comments while you're watching, I know we're live streaming to Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube all at the same time right now. So if you want to put your questions or comments in the feed, we'd love to include those with the ones that were sent ahead of time for this broadcast as well. And you can subscribe to our newsletter and get alerts when the broadcasts are coming out, and be able to do that too for upcoming broadcasts. But super excited. We've got people on that are watching live, and I'm going to have Kate kick off by just telling us a little about yourself and why you're so passionate about this topic, and then just what you do to help families.
Okay, well, that's quite a wide question there.
Yeah, well, you fill in whatever you want.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I have, my passion. I focus most of my attention, if not all my attention, on the autism spectrum. That's my expertise and my passion. And of course, it is a spectrum, so not just our lovely adults and children who have yet to verbally speak, but also, highly fluent, highly verbal, wonderful beings on the spectrum. And I've been I first decided I wanted to work in the area when I was 13, because I watched a movie called Sunrise, A Miracle of Love. And it was a 70s movie. And if you watch it now, which I highly recommend, it's on YouTube, you can watch it. It's very hokey because it's in the 70s.
Yes.
And it's clearly a 70s movie, because I'm a little long in the tooth now. I've been, when I was 13.
Oh, I grew up in the 70s. So yes,
It was, oh my God, it's 42 years ago I was 13. Is that
Wow.
correct? Yeah, 'cause I'm 55. So
Okay.
that's
Yeah.
so I've
Yep.
been working with families on the spectrum that long. And of course, it was 1 in 10,000 people
Yes.
diagnosed at that point
Diagnosed.
back then.
Mhm.
So I went into a niche field, and it's not niche anymore.
No, it's not. Absolutely.
But there were two things about that movie that really inspired me, and it was the story of a little boy called Ron K. Kaufman, actually, who is my colleague. I work with him now,
Oh,
actually.
wow.
But he was the son of these amazing parents, and he was diagnosed with severe autism when he was 2 years old. And and it was the story of how they decided to homeschool him because they
That's
didn't like
amazing.
the therapies. Yes, and they homeschooled him, and ultimately he went on to defy all the prognosis. He's married. Me and him, we work we have our own business together where we help families who are in the same situation.
Wow.
And he's, he went to college. He's an international lecturer. He's an author. So it's amazing. And the story
Right.
so inspired me because it was parents who were doing this.
Yeah.
It wasn't some kind of doctor who knew
Right.
everything.
Yes.
Who was telling people what they should and shouldn't do. But they were inspired for their own love and belief in their own child.
Right.
And that love and that belief was the strongest force on earth. And
Oh,
we prayed before
yes.
we went on, folks. I
Uh-huh.
hope I'm not
Oh,
outing
yeah.
you in that. And, and I do really believe in that universal force of love and
Yeah.
compassion and deep understanding and deep belief that every person before us is whole,
Yes.
capable, and that there is
Absolutely.
so much hope and capability for all of us to do whatever we want to do, no matter our circumstances.
Yes.
So I was really left with that, even though I was 13, so I was a teenager, which is, I was still open enough to really believe in the power of love and the
Yeah.
power of not seeing something as a tragedy or a terrible thing. I was so enamored by that. And also
Wow.
to believe that nothing is set in stone. There's nothing that
Yes.
we can't explore and go for in our lives. And because here it was told that this boy is always going to be like this.
Right.
He wasn't.
Yeah, but it's not.
No,
Yeah.
no. So that really inspired me. And ultimately I trained in that method. And my whole life I've empowered parents to work with their own children in the ways that they want. I'm not there to dictate. I obviously have ideas and thoughts of the
Mhm.
way to go that I see for myself is incredibly powerful, incredibly beneficial. But ultimately, I'm there to really empower a parent to choose, to be educated, and then choose what they want
Right.
for
Yeah.
themselves, because they know their child better than anybody else, and they're adult. And they have the time and the commitment to do everything. So it's very much,
Yes.
my work's very much about empowering parents to work at home with their children
And that's
or in
such a
other
good fit
environments.
with what we do. Yes,
Yeah, I know, it's a
absolutely.
great fit. I'm an
Yeah.
author. I've written 3 books. So, one is the Autism Language launcher, actually. So,
Oh, that's
and
different.
that's
Yes.
really
And you can
for
find all those on your website, right? At
yes,
katewilde.com. Yeah.
yes. You can find that on my website. You can find this on Amazon. You know, so this is all about how to help a not yet verbal child become verbal. And I don't know if you want to get into the other 2 books too. I don't want to talk
We
too.
can wrap it up at the end too. And
Yes,
I'll put
yes,
all the links in the description on YouTube as well as the podcast. So that way you can just kind of click on them
yeah,
and connect with
yeah.
Kate. Yeah. Yeah.
Good.
She has some great resources, great website. So and lots of, and you sent me other links too of other resources.
Yes,
So
yes,
I'll be able to share all that information in that description.
great,
But I
great.
thought we would kind of kick off, and I guess this is probably, a pretty standard answer. I mean, parents would say, yeah, duh, why is it important to tap into communication pathways? But other than what parents, traditionally think about why it's important, do you have anything to add to that about things that maybe we miss that that make this like the number one thing that we should be focusing on, especially for kids who aren't able to communicate? And as we're approaching education, I think a lot of times we're like, well, my child's behind, and we get that full stress there. Why is communication the thing that should be first?
Well, I would love to hear your definition of that, because I think I might be coming at this from a different angle than
Oh,
perhaps
okay.
you, which is kind of cool, but I'm not really sure, because when you say communication pathways, what are you referring to? Because that could be
So
defined in so many different ways, right?
right.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So I guess my perspective with my past guest is, this is what my child is perceiving from what I'm giving them. And then this is how I am receiving their information and judging what they're either understanding or not understanding.
Oh, okay. So, well, first off, if we're talking about actually probably all amazing beings who are not yet verbal,
Hmm.
right? So whether they're on the autism spectrum or not, maybe they're deaf,
Hmm.
maybe they don't have a tongue. I've met
Right.
human beings who don't have that.
Yeah.
It could be different things. I think one of the most important things that I would say, and I think that if you're a parent who's listening, you're probably going to nod a
You're
lot.
right.
I'm believing, is that the first and most important thing is to, I would say, from my experience, is it's really important to understand that they're actually understanding everything you're saying.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, and I mean, I am a bit daring right now because I'm saying everything, but I have to say that that's really my experience, and I've worked with over two 2,000 children one-on-one, actually myself.
Wow. Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
So,
Hmm.
I've worked with many more parents, but I'm talking about actually being down on the floor one-on-one with a
Right.
child or an adult, over 2,000 children. So I've done
Yeah.
literally tens of thousands of hours. So
Amazing.
I mean, I have, put in my time. I started
Yeah.
really young, so
Right.
you count
Yeah.
the hours. But, I so that has really been my experience, and,
Yeah.
because
That's
remember,
so
it's not
good.
the spoken word too,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
But it's, everything about how we are, what the energy we're animating us,
Right.
everything.
Yeah.
Because even our silence speaks, the word,
Mhm.
silence
Yeah.
speaks 1,000 words. It does. You can tell if someone's irritated with you,
Yeah.
right? And you don't
Uh-huh.
have to have words to communicate something. You don't have to understand. If
Yeah.
you can watch um, two children communicate together who don't speak each other's language and they get on just fine,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So
Uh-huh.
there's so much more, but even the actual words themselves, I believe that our children on the autism spectrum know. And let's say when I was first beginning, facilitated communication was, I don't know, the same as my therapy at the time, was way out in
Uh-huh.
the boonies. It wasn't mainstream at all. Now everyone's catching up to our ways, right?
Right.
But before then, that was kooky, kooky, kooky. But now it's so cool. And there's this great movie out called Spellers, and there are
Yes, we talked about that on our show yesterday. Uh-huh.
Yes, yes, there's a lot of very famous people now who are very autistic, in if you look at them, in
Mhm.
the fact that they're stimming a lot, they have yet to say a word, but they are typing unaided the most, beautiful, incredible philosophy, thoughts, and opinions. So so I
Right.
feel like I can say this now, and I
Right.
have
Yeah.
to back up because there's more than just one or two.
Yeah.
There is a lot out there. So I think for parents, because it's really hard if you have a 7-year-old who's not responding to you,
Right. I
and
think
maybe they're spinning in
exactly.
circles. It's hard to really get that they're actually understanding you. They're
Yeah.
receiving it. They're
Yes.
thinking about it. They can't get it out. That's
Yeah.
the issue. They can't get it out. So I
Right.
probably come from that perspective.
Mhm.
Is that I'm just going to assume that they're
Yes.
understanding
Just
me.
assume it. Mhm.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But what's really important is, what do I work on
Right.
to
Yes.
help them be more successful in the communication era?
Mhm.
And this is where I might be slightly different. I would say, in order to tap in, if we're using your word, because I
Right.
like the word,
Uh-huh.
tap into a communication, to their ability to communicate. I would see this world, because you sent me a question which I thought was interesting too. What was it called? The question was, uh, how do you help a kid live in a verbal
Oh,
world?
yes. That was, sent by one of our viewers,
Yeah.
Abigail. She said, "How best do we meet our children's needs in a world designed for the verbal?" That's
Yes,
her
yes. So
question.
I thought this was so interesting because I actually don't see this world as verbal as much as I
Ah,
see it as interactive.
yes. Yes. That's a very good way to put it. I think we
Yes.
just tend to see it being verbal people, that it's a verbal world, or our world is verbal, maybe, but it's
Well, I
not
think that
really.
that's, yeah, and
Yeah.
even kids' world isn't as verbal as an adult's world.
Mm,
We're very hooked on being verbal because
yes.
what do? We've been trained through school, luckily not your kids,
Yeah,
because
right.
you were all homeschooled, which is yay for the homeschoolers. But, you go to school, sit down, be quiet, sit down, talk to me. And what do we wanna do? We
And
wanna
listen,
sit
right.
down and talk to our friends, but kids don't do that. They dance, they run, they go back and
Yeah,
forth with
yeah,
one another, they throw
absolutely.
balls at each other, they build blocks with other, they blow bubbles. They don't really,
Yeah,
right?
yes.
So I think that one of the most important things in the world of autism that is not focused on, right? Which is the first block actually to communication, is, can we help them with their interactive attention span?
That is
Okay, which
really
is
good, yes.
different than their attention span.
Mhm.
Now I know I'm speaking a lot, so do you want to say something? So,
No, that's really good because yeah, it's the interactive attention span. I've never heard it described that way, but that makes so much sense, because we're always talking about the child's attention span. And just in general, it's short. It's just naturally a child does not have a long attention span, but interactively, that's a back and forth. So
that's
they have that give and that take, and that rest in between. But yeah, that I like that.
Yes, yes, and what happens in the autistic world, right, is a bit of the opposite than maybe neurotypicals, okay, which is
Ah,
our lovely, beings on the spectrum. They probably have a longer attention span than us. I don't know
yeah,
if you define yourself as
yeah.
being, well, I'm
Yeah.
neurodiverse, in fact, that I'm dyslexic, but I'm not on the spectrum. I don't know how
Yeah,
you
so when my oldest was diagnosed, my mom, when I was explaining it to her, she goes, "Well, that's you." And I I went, "Yeah, I kinda get this." And now I know why I always felt so awkward, growing
Yeah,
up, and, but a lot of parents do find that out when their child's diagnosed. They're like, "Oh, I self-identified completely with this."
that's right, that's right.
Yes,
So, so in the fact that they can hyper focus on their interests.
right.
So, if we think of our kids' stims, they can look at a fan
Oh,
for a
yes.
long time.
Mhm.
They can work a puzzle for a
Right.
long time. They can line things up for a really long time.
Oh,
They can talk
absolutely.
about their, yeah, yeah, right. They can look at a book, whatever their preferred stim is. But
Yes.
that's a singular activity on their own. That's a self-regulating. It's a great activity. It's
Right.
self-regulating for them. It's
Mhm.
important. I believe it's important for them,
Yes.
but that's them attending to an activity. And what happens is I think a lot of times, oh, if we can only get them to do, to acquire a skill, then somehow their communication will come. Right.
Right. Yeah,
But
that is. Yeah.
but communication is back and forth. So first of all, and also it's really hard to learn or to listen to somebody if you can't focus on them,
Right.
right? If you don't
Mhm.
have, so the interactive attention is how long can they stay interactively with another person,
Right.
exchange smiles or look,
Mhm.
or I blow a bubble and you blow a bubble and I blow a bubble and you blow a bubble, right?
Oh,
If we
yeah.
can lengthen that, we're
Mhm.
tapping into their communication, because that's like turn taking with another human being. That
Right.
is like you've got to take a turn in the conversation,
Yeah.
right?
Yep. Mhm.
And you can learn facial expressions, which is about communication, because even if it's difficult, let's say for an autistic child to verbalize, I don't
Right.
that I see it in two camps for an autistic person. One is if they just have autism, then if you focus on lengthening their interactive attention span, verbal communication will most likely come.
Oh, really? Huh.
Yes. Yes, because it's about, I can't learn to speak if I'm not attending to somebody.
Yes, that
Can't
makes so much
attend in the
sense.
first place.
Mhm.
I'm over here because I'm so dysregulated. Ah, right?
Right. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Right? But you find, but
Yeah.
some of our population, they
Right.
have something else going on, which I don't define as an autistic trait, but it's
Mhm.
like a comorbidity. Maybe
Yes.
they have apraxia,
Mm.
where it's actually hard, they don't have a lot of control over their motor movement of their mouth.
Right.
Then
Yeah.
something else is
But
happening.
that's still distracting when you're trying to interact because you're
Yeah.
focusing so much. It's like a child who has trouble holding a pencil, and then you're trying to tell them to be creative in writing.
Yeah. Well, yeah,
It's the same thing.
but if you first help them connect with you, and
Right.
they strengthen that muscle, even if they can't form the words, they can still see you go, yes.
Exactly.
You can still find another pathway, right? Through facial
Yes.
expressions, or through now because they can attend to you more, then they can learn to type more, then they can learn to
Yes.
focus their body more.
Mhm.
So this is why, for our population, I would say the autistic population is that the weakest link is their interactive attention span.
Hmm.
That comes very nicely with a neurotypical person.
Yeah.
They're instantly, I love you. I'm
Yeah.
here. I'm going to be like you, do like you, be right.
Right, and that gives a parent
Look
so
at
much
you, be with you.
feedback too, and I think we feel, satisfied with a child like that. It's
Yeah,
harder when we have a child that doesn't respond like that, and we feel like
yeah,
we're sometimes talking to a wall. And, yeah,
yeah,
that it
yeah.
makes it
So
much more, of a hurdle to get over in working with that child because we don't have that satisfaction of always getting the return.
yes. So then one thing I would suggest that you look at is there are like what I would call a different neurostates that they're in. So
Ah,
when they're stimming,
mhm,
right, and they're really focused on their other thing, whether it's their hands or whether they're jumping up and down,
mhm.
and they're not with you, they're busy
Right.
doing something else, they're stimming. I would call that a regulating neurostate, where
Okay.
their body is dysregulated and they need to regulate themselves. So they need to go
Yes.
inside of themselves and create equilibrium. And they do that with their own,
Right.
that they've chosen. That's not the time to connect to them,
No,
to ask them any.
exactly. Yes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So it's less frustrating for a parent if they can see, oh, okay, they can't do that. Their brain's on overload.
Right.
Can't take
Yes.
it in. Just like when did you give birth to your children
Yeah.
yourself?
Well,
Yeah.
1.5.
One and a half.
So I had an emergency C-section with my second, and my third, I just said, let's just repeat that and schedule it.
Okay.
So
But
yes.
but in the middle of a C-section or labor, either one,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
You might ignore what somebody else is saying
Oh, exactly. Yes.
because you're
Yeah.
so compelled with the physical thing that's going on,
Right.
right? You can't take it in.
Yeah.
So you want to think of it like that. There's no point me asking something here because their brains are on overload. They can't actually receive it.
Right.
This is a time when I would actually join in with what they're doing. See it. Oh,
Ah.
okay. So if they're running up and down, I'm going to run up and down.
Hmm.
I'm just going to say, I'm with you. I love you.
Yeah.
You know,
Yes.
this, and wait for them to connect, right? This is the important piece. Wait for
Beautiful.
them to connect.
Yes.
And you guys, you know it, right?
Right.
So
And they
when they're
have the time. Parents have the time when kids are home all the time to just say, let's just wait. I oftentimes we're just rush, 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 but homeschooling gives you that ability to say, well, we don't have to rush. Let's just wait till they're ready.
that's what I love, Peggy. That's what I
Yeah.
love about homeschooling is that you're not, you have all day, and our children on the spectrum, they're available when they're in a regulated neurostate,
Right.
right? So you got the regulating,
Yeah.
right? When they're
Hmm.
stimming. Then when they're regulated, that's when they come, when they're suddenly another child, they come over you, they might touch your face, they might, give
Uh-huh.
you physical contact, they might look at you. In that moment, that's the time to ask them for something, right? Because
Yes.
they're
Yeah.
regulated, saying,
A- And
Mom,
they're
I can
purposely trying to connect with you at that point too.
yes, yes,
Yes.
yes. So, and that's, as you say, Peggy, it's the greatest thing that everybody here is homeschooling
Right.
because you can regulate with them while they're regulating. And then you can work on the interaction when they
Hmm.
can. And then when they need to go back to regulating, you can go back to regulating. Then they
Right.
come back because they're always going to flit in and out.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Right? You want to do it at their time. And if you can, then the communication that you have at the time when you do it, when they're actually regulated,
Yeah.
is spectacular. It actually
Hmm.
is. And it's less frustrating for you because you're not trying to do it when they're shut for business.
Right. Exactly. That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes so much sense because yeah, we try to interrupt it. We want to try to make it on our schedule, and unfortunately, our kids just they like you said they need to come in and out of that cyclical. We often think of those cycles that kids have during the day, but I'm listening to you, I'm thinking the cycles just go much faster instead of they have a lot more attention in the morning than in the afternoon. Well, maybe it's like every 15 minutes they have more attention and less attention for another half an hour, and to kind of you know dive into that and
Well,
embrace it.
no, yeah. And actually, what I would suggest to you guys is that if you're interested and you're up to it, is that you spend a whole day just looking. Can I see? Oh, look, regulating neurostate. Basically, when
Okay.
there's oh, hello, I've got a minute of regulation.
Yes.
That's all you're doing all day is just see. Oh, can I see it? Can I see
Right.
when they're not available? Oh, available, not available, available. Just practice that skill.
Right. Absolutely.
Um, yes, and in those regulated moments, that's when they're open for business and they're
Right.
much more able to work those communication pathways because they've already come to you and they're saying,
Yeah.
"Hey, it's open. It's open.
Uh-huh.
I
Yeah.
can communicate
Right.
right now. Let's try."
Mhm. So when a child is stemming and we do interrupt them, does that kind of make them shut down to wanting to communicate more, or opening themselves up to larger time spans of communication. That as you're talking, that's kind of like the question that's been in the back of my mind.
Good question.
Are we working against ourselves in trying to force our child to stop regulating?
Well, yeah. I mean, I would say so. That's my opinion.
Right. Well, I want
Um,
your opinion.
yeah. I would never ever stop an ism, and unless obviously that the stim, unless that stim was actually harmful to them.
Right.
But I haven't. I can't imagine what that would be. Like I would never let a child be in danger.
Right.
Right?
Yeah, they're banging their
Um,
head on the wall and it's causing
I
them
would
harm.
I would protect their head
Right.
somehow, right? But that's a whole other question,
Right.
which
Yes.
I can help you with, but I know that's not really our topic. But mm, uh, so, but I think that you want to think about it this way: is that if you think that the stim is them regulating themselves, then which it is,
Right.
right? Which is then there's no downside to it. Right?
Mm,
Because let's say you felt nauseous, Peggy,
right.
right? Felt dizzy. We've all felt nauseous, we've all
Right.
felt dizzy, right? And someone was saying to us, "Hey, can you say the word bubble? Will you say the word bubble to me? Say bubble. Say bubble. Like, why aren't you saying bubble? Come on, we got to do this puzzle. We're going to do this puzzle. We're going to." You'd be like, "Oh, you go."
Right, exactly. There's a bigger demand right here, right now.
You have to block them out
Right.
because if you don't block them, you're going to throw up.
Right.
Right? And you're not gonna get better for yourself because in order to cure your own nauseousness or dizziness, you've gotta go deep inside of yourself and create some equilibrium. That's how you get better from dizziness,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
Now, once you feel better, what do? You go, "Oh, now let
Right.
me ask you a question," right?
Uh-huh.
So it's not that you don't want to,
Right.
it's
It's not
not
the
that you
interaction isn't being
can't. It's
yes.
that what everybody doesn't understand about autism is that they're so overstimulated and overwhelmed.
Mhm.
Like they have so much bombardment coming at them that they're constantly having to regulate, constantly. And then the more you try and stop them, the more they have to do it. Right?
Got it. Yes,
So
yes.
that just goes
Uh-huh.
on all day versus if you even just try this for a day,
Yeah.
where you just let them do it for as long as they want, you will find they will come to you and stay with you longer before they have to go back and recharge.
Yeah. So it does and then over time, does that then just you said communication comes, as that you work on more of that is and that now I lost my train of thought.
No,
But
you're totally on, yes. Well, if
yes,
you
so it
think
just
in
yeah,
order to be able to teach communication, you have to have interactive attention span, right? So
right,
every time you give your autistic child the ability, you let them regulate themselves like stim until they're
yep,
finished, then they will come to you. That's just what every child does.
right.
Parents just get scared. They think they won't. But if
And
you
I
think
I
about
think
it,
so, yes, it is that fear that just starts creeping in. Yep,
yes, but they always come to you
mhm,
once they're regulated because that's what they're going to do because they love you. And our kids
right.
want to learn. I've never met a child who
Oh,
doesn't.
exactly,
And they love
yes,
us. They want
mhm,
to be with us, but they can't. When they're not, it's because they can't, not because they don't want,
yes,
right?
right,
So as soon
yes,
as they're regulated, just like you, as soon as you feel better,
yep,
go out and play with your friends. That's what
right,
our kids do. They
mhm,
come to us, right? And they'll come to us. Now, what we're doing by allowing that is we are giving them the opportunity to do the hefty work of being an initiator, right? Instead of
yes,
always pulling
instead
them out.
of us trying to
Yes,
do
and
that.
making them the
Yeah,
responder, that's weakening them. Because every time
okay,
they come to us on their own accord, oh, it strengthens their neural pathways because they're doing it.
okay, Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
just like if I wanted to build your muscle in your arm,
Yep.
there's 2 ways I could do it. I could do this all day long.
Right.
Your arm. Imagine I'm doing your arm. For those of you on the podcast, let's say if I just took a person's arm and lifted it up and down for them, like
Right.
they're a rag doll, it would never, ever
Right. Exactly. Because it wouldn't be activated. Exactly.
That's right, because your brain isn't doing it yourself,
Right.
right? So it never works, right? But
Yes.
so this is a longer way round, but what happens is that's worth a million of you pulling your kid away from the stim.
Oh,
So
absolutely.
once they come to you once, it stays, right? But
Yes.
also they filled themselves up, their gas tank up immediately so that they
Mhm.
can stay with you longer, right?
Yes.
So you have more time, and then they'll go back to their stim because they'll need to regulate again.
Dysregulate again. Yes. Mhm.
Yes. Now what
Yep.
happens though is, and I warn you guys, is that then they're going to begin with, they're going to stim more of the time because
Oh,
thank God
that's
they've
good
been
to
allowed
know.
to.
Right.
But then they'll also be initiating more. That'll
Right.
strengthen, they'll stay with you more, which means you'll have more time to teach them communication, right?
Yes.
So this is the step before that happens.
Got
They've
it.
got to be looking at you to see how you move your mouth, right? It takes more
Absolutely.
than
It
a 1 minute attention span,
Right.
you know, in order to have a conversation
Mhm.
or in order to build a friendship. You've got to
Yes.
have that attention
You gotta
first.
have it. That Yeah.
Social
Mhm.
first.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is so, so good. I don't think I've ever heard anybody explain it that good before, and for me
Ah,
to be able to understand the purpose behind that, because a lot of times parents will turn, and this is one question from our viewer, and I think it's just probably a common question you get is, "Do you have any good calming strategies?" And you're saying, what do they do naturally? I mean, would you answer that any differently?
well, actually, calming, it depends from Suzanne P, lovely
Mhm.
lady. I have a
Yes.
friend who's called Suzanne P, actually, but I don't think it's the same one.
Oh.
So Suzanne P, I already love you. Okay.
Yeah.
But it depends if they're stimming is a self-calming activity,
Right,
definitely,
yes.
right? But so in terms of calming, it would mean that your child is agitated. So I'm going to assume that your child's agitated.
Right.
So what I would look for, right, first, the first thing that I would really recommend everybody do, and I mean this sincerely, is if my child's agitated, I'm likely agitated,
Right.
right?
Yes.
Yes, right. That
I
makes
found
sense.
that to be so true.
Yeah. And then what happens is because our children are really, I mean, they're so incredible in terms of the fact that they, I really believe they almost can read our minds, that they're so attuned
100%.
to our
Yes.
energy,
Mhm.
especially our nonverbal human beings, whether they're on the spectrum or not, because they're looking at everything. They're
Exactly.
sensing everything, not just the words. So I feel that our autistic friends and our nonverbal friends actually pick up way more how somebody is feeling than
Yes.
anybody else. But I know because this is why they stim actually. Our autistic people have what we call an S4, which is a super sensitive sensory system, which I know a lot of
Oh,
people
okay.
already know that
Yes.
experiencing sounds and smells and touch
Right.
completely differently than us
Yeah.
not autistic people.
Mhm.
Um, but one of those things is agitation. Other people's agitation feels like a tidal wave to them, like a
Yeah.
tsunami of offensive, like coming at you.
Right.
And so even though the agitation is all our own agitation is out of concern for our darling ones, that
Yes.
adds to their agitation,
Absolutely.
right? So when they're agitated, their vagus nerve goes into fight or flight, and so does
Huh?
yours.
Yes.
What
Yep.
you want to do and what I do for myself immediately is I start to wiggle my toes in my shoes.
Ah.
I press down on the floor because I want to get into my body right now. I want to go, okay, I'm okay.
Mm-hmm.
I'm all right. Not is my child all right? I want to know that I'm okay.
Yeah. Yep. That's that
Right?
airbag. You got to put it on yourself first.
That's right, Peggy. I want to know that
Yep.
I'm okay. So I've got to get in, and I've just got to, like, if I'm afraid, right, which you might be, especially if you're in public, you might be afraid that they're
Right.
about to kick off
Yeah.
and have a little meltdown. Okay, so the first thing is I've got to not be afraid.
Yeah.
The best way I can. So I know that if I start getting into the bottom of my body by like planting my feet on the, God's ground, right?
Right.
And
Yes.
I'm wiggling my toes in my shoes. I'm bringing myself here. Okay, I'm here. Touching my stomach or wherever I feel my anxiety. Oh, I'm feeling anxious. That's okay. That's okay.
Mm-hmm.
I'm okay. So I'm not going to say, oh, I can't be anxious, because as soon as I say I can't be anxious, I'm more anxious, right?
Right. Exactly.
I'm okay. I'm okay. I'm all right. Breathe. Okay. And then I'm going to bring my anxiety level down, and you're
Right.
going to watch your kids' level go down.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Because they do feed off of that.
Well, yes. I mean, I do remember because my godchild had autism too, and we ran a program for her for 5 years, actually, a
Wow.
home-based program for her. She's an amazing woman. She's 28. You're a
Wow.
wonderful woman. But at the time, I remember I was going outside with her, and I twisted my ankle. And you know how when you twist your ankle, it really hurts.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So I'm like, like I didn't think. I was
Yeah.
just let it. And instantly, my little, 4-year-old
Mm.
godchild was like, she did. And as soon as
Oh.
okay, as soon as I brought, okay, I've got to bring my levels down. As soon as I
Right.
brought them down, hers went down. It was just like that.
Wow.
And so that at least you're taking that agitation. So
Mm-hmm.
what you're doing is, by working on your own, it's okay if you have a little, you're just bringing it down.
Right.
Remember, you're
Yeah.
not saying, don't say I've got to have none, because otherwise that's impossible.
Right.
You've got to
No.
bring it down. As you're bringing it down, you're actually helping your child regulate theirs down,
Wow.
right? Because they're going to sense that. So now, instead of revving it up, you're
Mm-hmm.
decreasing it down, right? So that's the first place, is you've got to calm yourself. If
Yeah.
you breathe,
Oh yes.
focus on breathing, then they'll focus on breathing.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah. Yep.
That's what I would suggest that you begin with. Anyway,
Yeah.
I
Those are
hope that
great
helps that.
suggestions.
Yeah.
Yes. You just see the whole situation de-escalate when you're the one who takes the charge on the de-escalation instead of adding to it, which
Yes.
often we do out of our anxiety. And so
Yes.
good to point that out.
And then you can take charge of the situation once it's down. If
Right.
somebody else is revving up, you could say, please, can you leave the room? If somebody
Mhm.
else is going, oh my God. And I wouldn't say, be calm, it's okay.
Right.
I
No.
might say, once I've regulated myself, right? I
Right.
might, hey, darling, it's okay. I'm here to help you. I know you're
Mhm.
trying the best you can. That's what I
Yeah.
would say.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
know you're doing the best you can. I'm here to help you any way I can.
Absolutely.
That's
Yes.
what I might say. So I'm not trying to, because once a kid's in meltdown, they're not going to be able to respond, but they are going to be able to receive your calmness and your
That's
love. Basically.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you can take charge too, because if you see, oh, they might, hit you, be throwing something that's dangerous, you can just calmly pick it out of the way.
Right.
Then you
Yeah.
can start.
Yeah.
You
You're more observant when you're not in that fight or flight yourself.
That's
And
right. That's right.
yeah.
Peggy.
Yeah. And I do want our viewers to know too, if you are trying to find techniques to help with calming your vagus nerve or get out of that fight and flight. My friend Lisa and I did an interview in December on alternative mom care. And we talked about some different methods you can use to reset your vagus nerve. And so lots of really good information in that. We've both
Yeah.
done a lot of research in that area. So yes.
Oh, yes. It's actually a really, 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 really wonderful thing, that
Yes.
reset thing. Yes.
Yeah.
Too. And
Absolutely.
actually, if you are in a particular situation where your autistic child is having multiple meltdowns every day, I would go to uh, um, the website that's called autismcrisisturnaround.com. That will
Oh,
be I gave that to you
yes, I've got
because
that
we
right here, actually.
actually
Mhm.
yeah, there we go. Yeah, we actually have weekend programs, protocol where we're actually just working with families who are in acute crisis that
Oh,
way
okay.
as a way to
Yes.
turn that around. So,
Mm, so
and that
important.
can yeah. Yeah.
Yes. That's awesome. So I'm going to dive into a couple questions that were submitted before the show that
Okay.
I thought we could address in our last 15 minutes here. Um,
Mhm.
one mom, Julie O, asked, how can I encourage my daughter to at least try to put things into words? She is verbal, but has trouble with expression. So it sounds
Yeah.
like they've gotten a little ways.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
But
yeah, yeah. Well,
yeah,
it's such a great question, and I love that. I love that. So that's a great question that comes just from what we talked about when we talked about the regulating neurostate and the regulated neurostate.
yeah,
So when your child to teach language, verbal language, or for those of you who aren't actually teaching verbal language, you can teach nodding your head yes and nodding
yeah.
your head no in the same ways,
Okay.
right? I would pick times when your child's regulated, when they've come to you, they're looking at you, they're involved with you, and I would create a game, right? And I would
Good.
start with initiating a game that they already love.
Oh, that's
Right? So
good.
if
Yes.
your child loves bubbles, blow a bubble when they're in a regulated state. If your child loves numbers, start singing numbers 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, 5 and 6 and 7 and more, right? Or
Uh-huh.
if they love washing machines, I might draw a washing machine and pretend it's a tumble dryer. If they
Okay.
love cars, I'm gonna get some cars down
Oh,
and crash
yes.
them.
Yep.
Right?
Mhm.
So basically, I'm picking what they love, right?
Yes.
And so in some kids, some autistic kids and some kids don't like objects, but maybe they really love their feet to be squeezed or they love to be
Right.
tickled or chased. I'm going to do the very game they love. That's important because often
Absolutely. I
often
don
we're told,
many superhero costumes with my middle child.
yeah, great. That's great. And often we're encouraged to stay away from the things that they like, right? And I'm
Right.
the opposite from that. I'm
Oh,
saying,
yeah.
no, no, no,
No.
that's the
Spent
way
hours
to
building Legos and, yes, acting
yeah,
like a
yeah, yeah.
superhero.
And then, so if your child, it sounds like your child is in the beginning stages, then I would pick one word with it. I go bubble, 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 bubble. So I do that, or I do squeeze, 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 or car, or crash, crash, or chase, chase. So
Mhm.
it's like pow, pick one word, right? And I'm going to
Okay.
use that word as I do the activity they like.
Okay.
Right? Just using it so that they can hear it and they can just that because often what we do is we go wow and woo, isn't this wonderful and lovely, 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 and I really like this and I really like this and I want to blah, blah, blah.
Uh-huh. I fill it way too full.
Yeah, 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 yeah. And then maybe they just they go wow, and we're like, see, they're not talking, but we actually wow instead.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, you just want to pick one word. And then after, if you played the game for a while and they're really interested,
Right.
I would, the next time you go to blow a bubble, you pause and you say bubble, and I'll blow your bubble. Right. So you pick a
Got it.
moment just before you're going to do the thing they love. But first of all, you've got to start the thing they
Right.
love.
So the input has to be greater than the output. So we have to be inputting, 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 and
Yes.
then we can expect an output.
Well, what we're doing is you're setting the scene of joy. Like you're trying
Yes.
to find something that they're really motivated for, that they really
Yes,
like.
that motivation is huge. Right.
Yes, that they really like. And then, just before they get it, you ask them to do the difficult thing and they'll be more likely to do it. But for our
Yes.
kids, because you've just picked one word and maybe said tickle, 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 you've given them 30 what tickle, 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 tickle. So they've heard it. So they don't have to, it's already in their auditory memory. So
Oh,
it's
yeah. Yeah.
them to go into their brain,
Mhm.
find the right thing, and at least say an approximation of it because they've heard it so often.
Right. Yes.
In
Yep.
fact, there was this great Suzuki was an amazing string player. He was
Right.
amazing and composer, and he developed a way of teaching children to play
Yeah, the
music.
Suzuki method, yes.
That's right, the
Yep.
Suzuki. Yes, yes. And what he did is he didn't believe in you probably know this, Peggy, right? He didn't believe in teaching children to read music.
Right.
He believed in playing some music again and again and again until they could sing it. It was in their bones. Then
Right.
he'd give them an instrument and say, find that song on that
Mm,
instrument. But because they've heard it so much, they could
right.
easily find it.
Mm,
So that's what you want to do with the one word,
got it.
right?
Yeah, that makes so much sense.
With the
Absolutely.
activity that they love, so that this verbal communication that is difficult, obviously for your daughter, otherwise she'd be doing it more,
Right.
is associated with the thing that they love. And
Yes.
they're asked to do it for something that's so enjoyable it's associated with joy, basically.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. And yes, it encourages in a good place
Yeah.
versus, in a stressful place, which unfortunately we kind of through traditional teaching methods, we can cause a lot of stress. Education does cause a lot of stress, and kids shut down, especially
Right.
if they've met that failure or that resistance and being misunderstood when they've been trying to engage. And so, yeah.
Yeah, and that's actually one great thing about that all your classrooms are in your house is that you can play. No one's
Yes.
telling you you can't.
Yep.
Right? No one's saying,
Absolutely.
"What are you doing? You're too playful in this house."
Yes. Yeah. Unless the parent's that way. I interviewed one lady once, and she said she turned her kids completely off to homeschooling because she tried to do it like school, and her kids mutinied on her, and she ended up homeschooling later her younger kids, but her older ones would refuse to come back. What is possible? um,
Yes, that's true, that's true.
Let's touch on one more question before we wrap up. Danielle H asked, what methods would you suggest for helping to reassure a nonverbal child who is frustrated by a request that might not be understood by anyone present?
Yeah. Well, I would go a very particular way, which is for you again, this is about your own regulation, because often we can get upset. Oh, I'm so sorry you can't communicate. Oh, I'm so sorry I don't understand. Oh, gosh,
Right.
it must be so hard for you. Oh, you poor thing. Right. So, what are
Yeah.
we teaching first? What
Right.
beliefs are we teaching
So
about
good.
being
Yes.
nonverbal? Or about when we don't, because quite honestly, I'm misunderstood loads of times.
Yes.
Like you see that, and I have to like deal with it. Like
Right.
we do get frustrated in the world.
Yes.
And also sometimes I really feel that people put too much weight on verbal communication, that that's going to cure everything. I don't think it does.
Right.
Being able to speak does not equal happiness. Because
Yes.
look at all the
Yeah.
unhappy people who can speak in the world. There's a lot.
Yeah, we've proven that.
So let's not pretend that the only way to happiness is being understood or being verbal, right?
Right.
So what we can do is we can model being okay. It's like,
Hmm.
I might say, look, guess what? I don't understand what you're saying right now, but I'm going to have a lot of fun trying to figure it out.
Oh, love that.
Right?
Yes. Yeah.
And so I might, if I have a child who's indicating they want something, I don't know what it is, I'm going to have fun going through 50 million things. I'm going to say, stay with me. Stay with me. It's not that one. Okay, what about this one? What about this one? Is it a fish? Is it a fly? Is it like I'm going to communicate that I'm going to stay with you. And that is fun to
So
try
important.
again.
Yes. Mm.
And so what? So what? We don't know. It's like we still don't know it.
Right. Yeah.
Oh my God. And even if they get frustrated, you got to check in. Who's modeling frustration in the house? Right? Can we model something else? Can we say, oh, it's
Yes.
okay to be frustrated. Sometimes life is frustrating.
Mhm.
No, that's
Absolutely.
okay. That's
Yeah.
okay. So we don't need to protect them from it.
Yeah.
And we
Yeah.
can model having fun when when we're not understood or we can't
Yep.
get what we want to.
Exactly.
Because
Yes.
I mean, I'm sure you, Peggy, have a long list of not getting what you want.
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
I
Yes.
was one
Yep.
of them. Remember, I didn't get up at the right time, right? That's life. That's
It is. Yep.
I would say, how do we want to help our children? How do we want to help them with their resilience
Yes.
when
That
life
is
doesn't go
so
well?
important. Yes.
Yes, and pity isn't one of them.
No, it's not.
Nonverbal child, I
Yep.
would say, look, so you can't talk right now. It's not the end of the world. You can walk, you can dance, you can pick
Uh-huh.
your nose whenever you want to. Right? Let's really help them not feel bad about that, or
Right.
not
That's so
learn
good.
from us that part of them is bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And because there's so much more to focus on that they're doing, that they're trying, and trying is so important. Just like you
Yeah.
talked about that resiliency. And
Yeah.
yeah, I remember when my son was building Legos and, he was young and everything would fall apart because, of course, he wasn't an engineer. Like in his mind, this was going to be like the greatest thing until he picked it up. And so it's so funny because I remember talking with him and saying, well, it just needed to be built better. So now you have the opportunity to build it again so
Yeah.
that it stays together. And now looking forward, he's an engineer, and so encouraging, you just never know what you're doing to reinforce what they're going to, literally build on,
Yes.
to help them to continue learning and developing in
Yes.
the things that they're going to be amazing in.
And also for everyone to know that there are many different ways to communicate in the world, not just
Yes,
verbal. Like if you can
absolutely.
be interactive, you can live in this world, right?
Absolutely.
And you will find a way to get your point across.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Kate. I know you have a lot of resources. You can visit Kate at katewilde.com, and that's KATECW. Kate
Yeah.
Wilde, yeah. So it's KATECWILDE.com, and that'll be in the description on the YouTube video as well as on the podcast when it comes out. And so you can just click on that link, and then you have quite a few books, resources, and then what else can people find on your website?
Oh, yes. On my website, well, there are all the courses I'm running on my website.
Yes, yeah.
Have
Are
that.
those remotely so people can join in
Yes,
around
all
the globe?
via Zoom. Yep, they're all via Zoom all over the world. In
Yeah.
fact, I work one-on-one with families, from Australia, from India, from Pakistan,
Awesome.
from all over America, from Europe, from everywhere. You can also book a 20-minute one-on-one free consultation with me. I do
Wow.
20-minute support calls. I call them community support calls. The first Tuesday of every month. They go really
Oh,
quickly.
neat.
So
Yeah.
you got to
Oh,
get
yeah.
in.
Absolutely.
I do one-on-one work packages with families. I support them over a period of time to, create their home-based program for their
That's
autistic
awesome.
child and to pick what they want to focus on and what would be most helpful to them.
That would be great for a new family coming in, especially for homeschooling. That's kind of
Yeah.
going, how do we even get started? So great
Yeah,
resource there.
exactly.
Absolutely.
And I'm sure you have loads of amazing resources on your
We did.
site.
There was one question when Janelle had asked about homeschooling support services for special needs kids with autism. I would just say, search our YouTube channel, search our website, spedhomeschool.com. There's more information there than you could ever go through. We have over 1,000 videos on our YouTube channel just alone, and hundreds of articles. So just put in whatever keywords you want, search for that, and you'll find a lot of resources. We've got almost 6 years of developing resources on both of those platforms.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, thanks again, Kate. This was so fun. I'm so glad we were able to reschedule. And,
yes, thank you. I feel very honored that you asked me to come on. Thank you so much. I think you're doing amazing things, and it's so wonderful that you're creating this for all your, and because I know you did something amazing with your child. So I'm just so great you're passing that on. And for all of you who are homeschooling, I say, good on ya. Yes. I say go for your autistic child or any child. I think it's really, I really support that. I really know that that you're, doing that because you want the best for your child. So
absolutely.
I really admire that choice that you're making. And
yes, lots of sacrifice, but it's so worth it. So yes, we just commend you parents out there. So thanks again, Kate. Visit Kate's website, and thanks for the work that you do, Kate. I can tell your heart is in it, and families are blessed by what you do, I'm sure. So and thank you all for joining us. Next week, we're going to be talking about, should I get my child diagnosed? I know that's a question many of you ask, and we'll be interviewing a diagnostician who will kind of give you the ins and outs of what's involved with that and how that information may be helpful to you in your homeschooling. So you'll want to join us back here for that episode next week. So take care, everybody. God bless, and we'll see you then. Bye.
Bye.
This is Empowering Homeschool Conversations, provided by SPED Homeschool. Go to spedhomeschool.com to get resources and support for teaching your unique